Why Millennials and Zoomers are turning their back on capitalism. Nearly 8 out of 10 young millennials and Zoomers blame capitalism for the housing crisis, and 2/3 want to live under a socialist economic system. Why? Well, we'll be exploring that in today's program, and it matters because these are our kids, and many are still living with us, so we're exposed to their concerns and we need to understand them to be able to help them, and for us to be able to adjust to the world they'll be inheriting and that they are going to be in charge of. So, who represents these millennials and Zoomers? Well, they have political representation, and in a minute or so, I'll be introducing you to the person they view as their leader, a person who thinks and speaks for them, a person they're looking to advance their political future. Welcome to the USA One podcast, the program where I share the most interesting notes of the day from social media, radio, newspapers, and other publications that we know you don't have time to follow. I'm Juan Andres, also known as Senor USA. If you would like to view our programs, you can find us on the USA One podcast, on iHeartRadio, Podbeam, TuneIn, Alexa, and YouTube, and many others as well. Just Google us and you'll find us. It's easily accessible on your smartphone or any internet-compatible device. The young are hungry and the rich, like Donald Trump, are on their menu. This ideology first appeared, it's not anything new, it first appeared in the 18th century, the 1700s, when the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau supposedly declared, when the people shall have no more to eat, they will eat the rich. But today, this phrase, believe it or not, is all over Twitter and social media, and it should concern us. It's pretty drastic. So, should the world's Trump billionaires start sleeping with one eye open? No. It's very clear that the millennials and the Zoomers, those born between the early 80s and the 90s, and the Zoomers, the following generation, are not advocating violence. But it's also clear that this is more than just another passing phase. They're very serious about trying to resolve the problems, and they don't think that capitalism is the way to do it. And they're a big group. Let me tell you how many of them represent the millennials and the Zoomers. The world's most famous left-wing millennial, New York rebellious Democratic Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's the counterbalance to the Republican Trumpists. And this neatly sums up the generation's defining period of history as shown by the beliefs and ideas of the young in this emerging period. If leftism often seems to be the preserve of socially awkward nerds, as it is, and shouty older white men, well, Ocasio-Cortez is the leader of the cool kids who like the idea of the redistribution of wealth and power. She's one of them. She speaks for them. When she speaks, it connects with over 1 million. They're a bigger group than MAGA. Here's a video of the Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. If you haven't had a chance, I'm sure you know about her on the news, but have you heard her speak? Have you had an opportunity to listen to her ideas? This is a very short video, but it gives you an idea of what it is that these young people, over 100 million Americans, find so attractive. So you can decide for yourself if you think she speaks and thinks for your son and daughter, but still living with you, so you hear how they talk and you'll hear how she talks, and then you'll have an idea. They're living with you because they can't afford to move out, so they're partially right. Changes need to happen. I don't necessarily know that it's the way they want to achieve it, but they're in power. We're on our way out. They're the ones that are going to be running the country before all of us leave the planet. And this Ocasio-Cortez, she may not share your point of view, but does she share your child's point of view? That's the important thing.
And there are millions of Americans that won't be able to afford a meal to eat, that don't know if they'll be kicked out of their home, that are unsure if they're going to have to quit their job to care for their child. And we are having entire bodies, and the Senate prides itself as one of the most deliberative bodies. They abandon them. The number of Americans living in poverty since May has grown by 8 million people since just May of 2020. And according to a study from Columbia University, this rise in poverty has been concentrated in Black and Latino children and people. The CARES Act stimulus checks and unemployment benefits lifted more than 18 million individuals in the United States out of monthly poverty in April alone. But this number fell from 18 million to 4 million individuals in August and September after unemployment benefits were expired. Just 44% of people in the United States are very confident that they can afford the needed food that will be necessary for the next 4 weeks. That means the majority of people in the United States are not very confident in their ability to eat.
Well, it doesn't sit easily with some when the Congresswoman accepted a free invitation to the exclusive Met Ball last week in a dress emblazoned with "Tax the Rich." Even some leftists joined the right in puffing up the outrage, but it showed that even elites can't escape the young flexing their political muscle, and gives us a glimpse of what's coming. That's the future. And your children are behind her. They think like her. They like what she does. According to a report published in July by the right-wing think tank, the Institute of Economic Affairs, the IEA, they noted that, by the way, notice that I'm using data from a right-wing think tank, not a left, right-wing, okay, conservative think tank. And they are saying that younger persons or progressives here in the USA have taken a decidedly left-wing turn. Nearly 80% blame capitalism for the housing crisis. They went ahead and they did a study. 80% blame capitalism for the housing crisis, while 75% of these over 100 million Americans, young Americans, believe that climate emergency is specifically a capitalist problem, and 72% back sweeping nationalization. All in all, 67% want to live under a socialist economic system, or what they see as a more just economic system. Oof. This surprised me. I'm pretty much on top of things, but I didn't realize that way over 100 million young people are thinking in this direction, which is amazing, because here we have the older folks in the Republican Party wanting to take us into an autocracy, which is a dictatorship, and then we have the young ones saying, no, we're going to be socialist. But capitalism is not the way to go. So the interesting thing here is there's the conservatives in the country, the Republicans, saying capitalism isn't working. We want an autocracy where we have control. They're doing it for other reasons. They're doing it because they don't want the minorities to become more powerful than they are. That's why they're doing it. But nevertheless, what they're saying is capitalism doesn't serve us anymore. And they're 100 million. And then you have the millennials and the Zoomers, who are over 100 million. I think they're 120 something million. I have the notes, and as I develop the program, I'll dig through my notes and make sure that I give you the exact number. But between the two groups that want change, one to a dictatorship or autocracy for other reasons, and the young who want a socialist form of government because they don't want all the rich to get everything and then the poor not to get anything. Well, my God, that's 2/3 of the country. 2/3 that want change. Now, when that change comes about, I'm sure the young and the old are going to fight for which form of government. And if the Republicans end up getting an autocracy, the young they're going to rebel. Oh, I could see this coming. I don't know what to say. I'm confused. I've lived in this country under capitalism all my life, and it's worked well. I have no complaints. But changes are coming. Changes are coming. Either the old Republican establishment is going to change it to an autocracy, or the young people, as soon as they get into the government and take over the power broker jobs in the country, they're going to change it. We're sitting in the middle. So, and this is why MAGA is showing its monstrous head, only to be slain by the young, by the way. Because if they get any power, the young are not going to put up with it. In other words, MAGA is a passing phase, though, is the way they see it, that will never take hold for long because it goes against the tide of America's future, which will be in the hands of the millennials and the Zoomers in a very short period of time. 20, 30 years, my God, if they were born in the 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010, 2020, they're in the 30s and 40s. Ocasio-Cortez is 29 years old. So they're just barely getting in to the power jobs. This is going to happen very, very fast as they start espousing their ideas and making the changes in which direction they want this country to go in. By the way, I'll be putting up a photo of Donald Trump, and Republican MAGA leader, and that represents about 100 million MAGA Americans, and wants things to be like they used to be, the nostalgic past, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who represents the majority of the 72 million millennials and 67 million Zoomers, a total combined population of young adults of 132 million. We're not talking that the Zoomers are in kindergarten. They're already in the workforce. This is going to happen quite fast. Two formidable forces, and who will win? God, I don't know. The past or the future? But there lies the rub. Which one is going to win? The Institute for Economic Affairs, again a right-wing think tank, warned us that their polling is a wake-up call for supporters of MAGA market capitalism. This is a conservative think tank, and these are their words. Wake-up call for supporters of market capitalism. It's a striking phenomenon here in the United States. A Harvard University study in 2016 found that more than 50% of young people reject MAGA capitalism, while in 2018, a Gallup poll found that 45% of young Americans saw capitalism favorably, down from 68% in 2010. So it's declining. I mean, that's a big jump. 23% in 8 years? Wow! Many of the young have concluded that an economic strategy that penalizes them, coupled with a culture war that denigrates many of their deeply held values, amounts to a MAGA Republican declaration of war on their generation. See what I mean? If the Republicans get their way and they end up with an autocracy, these kids are going to rebel. There's going to be a big problem, and they're a bigger group. The Republicans are mostly seniors, and they're tired. These kids are full of energy. Full of energy. Look, this is not Juan Andres saying this, by the way. It's the Institute of Economic Affairs. It's a right-wing think, a conservative think tank. So don't get upset with me when I'm giving you the information that I managed to run into, because that's what I do. I scour all these publications on the net to try to get to the bottom of things and give it to you as quickly as I possibly can when I find it. And this is coming from the right. And the politicians know about this, but they're not telling you. You see, you're not going to hear about this in the news. If you don't go online and connect with little programs like this, you'll find out too late, and you'll be confused and not even know why, because no one even gave you an explanation or helped you prepare for anything like this. This is major. Look, whether you ask free marketers, conservatives, centrist, or center-left, or socialist, they all believe the U.S. has a housing crisis. So they admit, everyone admits that, and that it's a massive problem. But all have different answers about where it comes, how it came about, and how to solve it. So if people are getting ripped off and think the market is rigged, and that's what you're hearing from the right, everything is rigged against them, the one way people can react is to generalize, right? The rigging is a lie, and the generalization is very weak because it doesn't give you specifics, it doesn't give you facts. They're generalizing. So this is what capitalism is like. They assume that capitalism is the reason why all this happens. And when over 100 million Americans supporting going back to the way it used to be, MAGA, in my opinion, it makes the young more politically entrenched and ready to fight this. Look, rents in the U.S. are approaching half of a tenant's take-home pay. Now, many of you are homeowners, so you've got your mortgages and you're living okay, or you've paid off your homes. But these young guys, prices of houses are outrageous, and they have to pay rent. They got to live somewhere if they're not living with mama and papa. Or if they're living with mama and papa and they can't move out, they can't afford to take half their salary for rent. So they're forced to live in conditions that they may not choose on their own, but they're forced to live this way because of the situation in the country that they live in. The richest country in the world is having these problems. Could you imagine? There's no rational reason for the young to defend the present capitalist economic system. According to a 2019 poll, 2/3 of under 25s, 25 years of age, believe their generation will be worse off than their parents. A generation was told that it was important to go to a university so you could have a salary, you could live comfortably on, but the earnings gap between graduates and non-graduates has fallen substantially. We have people playing sports that make more money than a doctor. It's unbelievable. And this is catching up with us. And despite the U.S. graduates accruing a large debt to get all these titles and all the information that they need to supposedly make more money, and then there are people that are high school dropouts and are making equal to them. That's very disheartening. And now they have debt, and the dropout is making equal to them, doesn't have any debt. Look, in the years that followed the financial crash, the austerity in particular, it was the wages of the young workers that fell the most in a protracted living standard squeeze without precedent in the history of the United States. The last time something like this happened, it was the Victorian age. Victorian age. That's the last time something like this happened, and we're in the middle of it. And here we are living in the richest country in the world, living under these protracted living standards. It's insane. Formal education plus economic insecurity is a hard mix, but it's not the only phenomenon at play. Non-academic routes to secure a standard of living have been stripped away, such as the skilled apprenticeships available to so many 16-year-olds who dropped out of school. Okay? They can become an apprentice and learn how to become a carpenter and a plumber or whatever it is. All those have disappeared. But a profound existential question has led many young people to question the entire economic system. Capitalism doesn't work, is what they say. While much of the mainstream media offers little sympathy for the insecurities and aspirations of younger Americans, the internet has offered a lot. Okay? A lot. More than 1/3 of workers on 0-hour contracts, often not knowing how much they will be paid week to week, are under 25, while many others are in bogus self-employment, where they are registered as self-employed but are actually working on contract for an employer while deprived of rights such as a minimum wage or a holiday pay. Okay? They work for agencies, temp agencies. They tell them they're temp, but they work that way for years. The free market, they were told, would bring them freedom. Instead, it gifted them insecurity and living with mama and papa. The sacrifices made by young people during the pandemic have further strengthened a sense of injustice. Most young people are not immersed in radical literature, yet politicized Zoomers and Millennials leave an ideological footprint in their friendship groups. But this doesn't mean the left should simply bank the two rising generations, waiting for demographics to eventually grant the political victory that has so far eluded them. Generation left might not be that left after all. Maybe they're sort of center left, just upset with the whole system. A populist right-wing answers to their disenchantment might cut through, like for example in France. For example, many young people have swung to the far right. In the UK, few are members of trade unions, which historically helped craft anti-capitalist attitudes, while some, classically, right-wing sentiments coexist with leftish attitudes among young people. They're confusing the left and the right, and they're trying to mix them up to come up with something that they think is going to work, because they know that what they have right now isn't working for them. And the rich, whose wealth surged during the pandemic, remain stronger than ever. But it is clear that young people see no rational incentive to back a system that seems to offer little other than insecurity and crisis for them. And even though they may share some right-wing answers, it's obvious that they'll be bringing about change, and it's best we realize that that's going to happen and get ready. Get ready for the short life of the MAGA movement, because MAGA is not going to satisfy them, and they are the future. And its leader, who doesn't have a clue of what millennial and Zoomers need, because all he's done, he's lived his entire life devoid of reality, brought into a rich family, never had to suffer, never had to go look for a job, never had to go through what these millennials and Zoomers are going through. So his answers don't satisfy them. Not at all. Look at the mix of the people that show up to his rallies. You don't find millennials and Zoomers there. I'm Juan Andres, also known as Senor USA. You can always find us on the USA One podcast on iHeartRadio, Podbeam, TuneIn, Alexa, and YouTube. And you can Google us and they'll pop up. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.